Hello everybody, this is Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer, quick match gameplay. This time around I'm playing as Empire against the Beastmen led by Genzi on the map Stallion Tomb. So right off the bat, I'm going to throw things in slow mode a little bit. I wanted to try a bit of a unique build here with Empire, because I've been running a fairly generic vanilla build I suppose, relying on kind of terror bombs from Flying Lords, and usually relying on either Lore of Life or Lore of Light. As the lore of support, and then relying on kind of a bit of a weak front line, maybe with flagellants of great swords, backed up by maybe a handful of handgunners and outriders with grenade launchers, and then finally a bunch of demigriffs kind of support. So I decided to try something a little different this time around, and I decided to go for an all infantry build. So for my lord, of course, I decided to go with the general of the Empire on foot, coming with potion of toughness, potion of full hardiness, and stand your ground. Just a fairly cheap lord, fairly tanky, should perform okay, especially against the beastmen lords who are very squishy and don't really have much in the way of armor. My front line is actually spread out actually, so for the other heroes I brought in a Jade Wizard with Dwellers Below and Earthblood just as a support caster. I still really like the Jade Wizard for an all infantry force. I think it's very solid. Two Empire Captains, one on each end, both coming in with Stand Your Ground, and Stand Your Ground is, I think, a very strong ability for what it is. 100% charge resistance, which is very, very solid. Especially against a lot of high mass units and that sort of stuff, or high charge, high mass units. Now my front line is composed of a mix of swordsmen and Sigmar's Sons and Tattersouls. So pretty cheap front line, but backed up by these captains and the general, they should have some pretty solid charge resistance and be capable of trading pretty efficiently with beastmen infantry, which is what I was expecting to see. Behind them, these guys are backed up by 2 units of great swords. That's not great swords, that's handgunners. But 2 units of great swords who are kind of there to dive in and deal with any bestigors if my opponent decides to bring them, or just kind of plug up any holes in the line. And behind that, finally, in the very back, we have a unit of Empire Spears. And the Empire Spears, just they have 300 points left over. They'll do pretty well against large and that sort of stuff. Then for my shooting contingent, I have 3 units of handgunners spread out very wide so that they can't all be shut down at once. One of those is, of course, the silver bullets, and these guys are invisible as stock. And then finally, the centerpiece of my army here is the steam tank, and that is already, I do believe, firing. It's already fired its first shot here at Kazrak, and that is a miss. So yeah, teeing off already, and that is kind of the linchpin of my force, there to absorb my opponent's infantry and kind of just hopefully cause terror outs. Now, my opponent decided to go with a bit of an interesting, more monster, large, heavy build. Brought Kazrak One Eye, which is interesting. Normally you see Morgur coming in from the Beastmen, but Kazrak on the chariot does have armor piercing. He's pretty mobile, very high charge bonus. I do believe coming in with most of his abilities and equipment. Alongside him is the Regiment of Beasts coming in with Wissen's Wild Form and Flock of Doom. Flock of Doom is very powerful against Empire's squishy infantry. And then the front line is very cheap. Ungor Spearmen with shields, Destroyers of Drakwold, which are the unique Ungor Spears with shields. These guys have very high melee defense, and they have poison, so they will actually be very, very strong support unit. And then finally in the back we have 2 units of Ungor Raiders that kind of provide some poke damage, shut down my skirmish units. And behind that, a unit of Goreherd, and the Goreherd are a very strong melee unit. They dish out a lot of hurt, and my opponent was basically just using this kind of as a kind of a linchpin for his more important units, which are out here on the flanks. And he has Chaos Warhounds with poison out here on the right, supporting a unit of Sons of Gorsk. These are the new Regiment of Renown Centaurs with Ravens, and these guys do have armor, so they will actually perform fairly well against Empire Cavalry, especially stuff like Reiksguard and Empire Knights, which Empire can sometimes bring, because Beastmen tend to have very squishy units, so you don't really need the armor piercing of demigriffs. And the Sons of Gorsk will actually trade very efficiently with those. And then alongside them we have a unit of Razor Gore Chariots, and these guys do have armor piercing and anti-infantry. I don't think they're the best against Empire, because Empire does usually have its own cavalry contingent to shut them down. But in this situation, they're going to actually be pretty good against all my infantry. And then finally he has 3 units of Minotaurs, one of which is the new Regiment of Renown, the Butchers of Kalkingrad. And these guys have regen and they cause terror, so definitely a bit terrifying. And Minotaurs are a very, very strong unit. They do have that blood greed. They have which gives them a huge leadership and speed buff, and makes them immune to psychology when enemies are nearby. So they're very, very dangerous and very powerful. In the meantime, though, my steam tank, throwing things into full gear here. My steam tank is teeing off on poor Kazrak over here, just kind of hitting him every now and then, and doing some damage. As you can see, I do believe that was a miss, which is unfortunate. My opponent is trying to kind of juke back and forth with Kazrak, making me miss, but the steam tank is still pretty precise. The The steam tank is not quite comparable to a battery of artillery, but it actually does pretty good. It does have pretty decent rate of fire compared to artillery pieces. It's about worth about half an artillery battery, and is significantly better in melee and for support purposes. So definitely something to keep in mind. Its rate of fire is actually much better than standard cannons, despite only having one gun. Now these swordsmen are about to have a very bad day as the 3 units of Minotaurs come plowing into them. These poor guys have absolutely no chance. But the Empire captains in there, I've already shuffled the spears over, and in the meantime, seeing those guys were coming in, I lined up all of these handguns ready to wail on these Minotaurs, and these guys are already falling apart. Now the great swords over here are sitting tight, and these swordsmen are just getting slaughtered. And unfortunately, I wasn't on top of my captain; I was too focused on the left flank, so my Empire captain can get in here to deal with the Centaurs. Over here, the hounds go in; they're going against the silver bullets, top priority target, and I will shift the great swords into the deal with them. Unfortunately, I think I only now noticed these great swords need to be used to plug the gap here against the Sons of Goros, who, as you can see, that armor is protecting them a lot against the swordsmen. They've taken minimal damage against swords. Great swords do get hit in the flank by the chariots, but they do push onward and just go for the Sons of Goros and start tearing them apart with the help of this Empire captain. Meantime, frontline engagement is going very much in my favor because my Empire lords and captains are in there. The swordsmen are tearing things up. Over here, the Sons of Sigmar are very strong. The Sigmar sons. They're just dishing out a lot of hurt to these Ungor spears and the destroyers of Dracwald. In the meantime, I have flanked my opponent's units with the steam tank and kind of gotten to the back and hoping to tear out them. I do drop a Dwellers Below on these Minotaurs, seeing that kind of bogged down against this captain and what tatters are left of my spears, and they practically annihilate the 2 Minotaur units. One gets slaughtered to man, and one is forced to rout ignominiously from the field, basically annihilated. Now, the Butchers of Kalkingrad are doing pretty well for themselves, but the Great Swords are in here helping hold their ground, and I do still have a unit of handgunners over here who will be able to provide some support, though at the moment they are obstructed. I'm not entirely sure by what. Might have ordered them to shoot at a different target. I'm not entirely sure why they're obstructed, but they do get plowed into by these Razor Gores, and it will do a lot of damage to them. But not the end of the world. And now the handguns are opening fire again on the Butchers of Kalkingrad, now that my units have kind of gotten clear. Poor Kazrak over here is practically dead. He's going to die to that steam tank. And these Butchers of Kalkingrad get shot up. As you can see, they still have a lot of models left. They have not all of their models left, actually. But they are getting shot up pretty quickly by the handguns, and they'll be gone fairly soon. Now, my Jade Wizard does get routed off, but that is okay. I do have this Empire Captain chasing the British Regiment of Beasts, putting him down. Sigmar Sun's still holding their own against the Destroyers of Dracwald. They've already routed off the Spears, who are now coming back. Actually, not sure which of the Spears are coming back. The handguns, though, firing away. Empire Captain and the Great Swords did some pretty brutal work here against the Sons of Gors, but are now getting kind of slammed into in the flank. But the Razor Gores and the Great Swords can't really hold up to that. They're definitely struggling. Handguns, though, tearing through these Butchers of Kalkingrad. Butchers have silver shields, but if you can get behind those shields, you can definitely tear through them very, very quickly with the handguns. And the steam tank is here, tying them down. Steam tank is not ideal against Minotaurs. It's not really ideal against any large armor-piercing units like this, but it is the best I got to time down. And these Greats are just kind of chasing things off. And now these guys are coming under flank fire from these handguns that are recovering. Even my Jade Wizard actually makes it back. He recovers. This Empire Captain doing absolute champion work here against the Ungor Spears, tearing them apart. And the Destroyers of Dracwald are kind of getting torn up by the Empire Captain and the Sigmar Sons, while my opponent's backline is getting tied down by these Tattersouls. And the Tattersouls, of course, unbreakable. It's still 1,000 HP. They are a larger than average unit, so they held out very well. And my opponent's army finally does shatter due to a mix of unit losses and leadership loss because Kazrak died so early. So definitely one of the saving graces there was that I sniped down Kazrak pretty early on. I took about a third, or maybe even a quarter of his HP off, or sorry, maybe a quarter or maybe a third of his HP off with the steam tank. As you can see, the steam tank, despite not going in with, I do believe it didn't go in with any chevrons because I think I was exactly made the cut for how much money I spent with the spearmen. Despite that, Steam Tank actually gained a lot of experience here. And that was mostly because at first it was teeing off against Kazrak, which obviously wasn't going to get him much kills, and then it was fighting the Butchers of Kalkingrad and the Minotaurs in the center in that kind of mosh pit. And so it was actually doing quite a bit of hurt. So this kill count definitely hides just how much damage it did. The rest of my army did pretty well. The swordsmen did pretty poorly, and I think it's because they just got unlucky in this situation. The Sons of Gors performed very well, a lot better than even I expected against the swordsmen. Just absolutely annihilated them. When faced up against units that were more optimal against them, like the Ungors, you can see the swordsmen actually performed pretty well. Same with these Sigmar Sons, and of course the Tattersouls. Against the Ungors they did fine, and against the Gors. But when faced up against those brutal units, these poor guys got caught by the Minotaurs, or one of these units got caught by the Minotaurs, the other one by the Sons of Gors, and they just got annihilated. There was very little they could do. The Great Swords did a little better. One of them tore through the Hounds a bit. But once again, Great Swords are not ideal for this situation. They're not amazing against cavalry. They're certainly not, because their anti-infantry bonus doesn't kick in there. They're not amazing against warhounds, because their armor piercing is fairly pointless there, as is their anti-infantry bonus, so they just didn't get much done. The handgunners and silver bullets did amazing work, because most of these kills are minotaurs and bushes of Kalkingrad, and the Jade Wizard, of course, got some amazing work done with that, Dwellers Below. And the Empire General, Empire Captains were just absolute champs. They were definitely MVPs in the way that they held their ground and just stopped the enemy from pushing through. They helped halt those Sons of Goros. One of them helped kill or scare off the Regiment of Beasts, as well as lock those Minotaurs in place. And the Empire General, of course, just going into the middle of the fight there and helping hold the center with alongside his troops. So just a very, very solid, I think, hero lineup here. And so I definitely had a lot of fun trying to do a different little channeling my inner Dawi here with a mass infantry build in this empire. So definitely a bit interesting. Definitely a bit fun to try something different out. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any questions, comments, any questions about Quick Match, any recommendations for unit comps or units you'd like to see demonstrated, be sure to post those down in the comments and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, I appreciate you all for watching, and bye for now.